5 ways to pay for long-term care expenses. Well, you can pay out of your pocket. You can buy long-term care insurance, but it is, in terms of the whole population, it's relatively few people have it, and for many retirees, it's a very unpleasant, because there's a tendency for the long-term care premiums to rise while people are in retirement, and also you could well pay for years and years and never actually need it. So in many cases, it's hard for people to bring themselves to adopt this coverage. Medicare, once you're 65, practically everybody in the country is on Medicare. And Medicare pays for long-term care expenses just enough to confuse everyone, okay? So Medicare basically covers doctors and hospitals. So but it doesn't cover nursing home costs. It won't pay for assisted living costs. It covers nursing home costs just enough to confuse everybody. So let me explain this for a second. Let's take a situation where we have an elderly, someone in their 80s, and they have a stroke, or they break their hip, fall down and break their hip, or they have some other medical issue. They go to the hospital, they're in the hospital for a few days, and then the doctor orders rehab, and the rehab takes place, in many cases, at a nursing home, nursing facility. Well, during the period that the person is under rehab, Medicare will cover it. As soon as the rehab ends, Medicare stops, and if the elderly person cannot go home, they still need long-term care in a nursing home, then the family's going to have to pay for the long-term care at the nursing home. And as Chris mentioned earlier, the cost is typically averages over $5,000 a month for that coverage. Another program that's available to many, many people is Veterans Aid and Attendance. So who can qualify for aid and attendance, and how does it work? So for anyone who served on active duty, any veteran who served on active duty during a wartime period since World War II can potentially qualify. And the wartime period since World War II cover most of the period since World War II. So this is really a potentially widespread benefit. In order to qualify for aid and attendance, the person needs to be over 65. They need to show the VA that with the income they have, they don't have enough to cover the cost of assisted living or that they need, or they don't have enough to cover the cost of in-home care that they're trying to purchase. And so that's the idea, and if it's awarded, then the amount that's paid is typically $1,000 to $2,000 per month once it's awarded by the VA. Also, that same benefit is potentially available to the widows of wartime veterans. So this can be helpful. It's particularly helpful for in-home care. It's particularly helpful for assisted living. It's not very helpful for nursing home care, because that $1,000 to $2,000 won't cover the cost of nursing home care. Okay, the other program, the federal program that will actually cover and pay for long-term care in a nursing home is Medicaid, not Medicare. Incidentally, I don't think the people who are over 65 aren't as confused about this. The people that are confused about this are the children of people over 65. They sometimes confuse the two. They think that mom or dad's nursing home costs are going to be paid for automatically by Medicare. Well, as I pointed out, not so. It's Medicaid. And in order to qualify for Medicaid, basically you need to be flat broke, right? That's that's the appearance of the rules. Now, in fact, there are a lot of ins and outs of this, and many middle-class people can actually qualify for Medicaid. So I want to give you an example now of another family and what happened to them. So this is Ralph and Ruth, and they live right down the street from Bill and Mary. And the two families have known each other for years because they moved into the same subdivision at about the same time, and they had kids about the same age. And so all these years of athletics and so forth, the two families have known each other very well. Now Ralph and Ruth don't have as large an estate as Bill and Mary. When Ralph retired a couple of years ago, and his savings was about $250,000. But they were looking forward to the retirement. He was glad to retire. But the year he retired, Ruth started to have mental lapses. First, it was just she couldn't find the right words. And then she couldn't find stuff she was looking for. And then she couldn't find her car in the parking lot when she went to Kroger's. And then she couldn't find her way home. And so this change was rapid. Now this is an example of the early onset Alzheimer's, and I've only seen this on a couple of times, 3 times, in recent years in my practice. But it's very tragic, and it follows a different pattern than the dementia we see in people who are in their 80s and 90s, because it typically moves very rapidly. At any rate, for Ralph, of course, he's trying to take care of Ruth, but Ruth's personality was deteriorating at the same time her mind was. And so she became very restless, and she would get up in the middle of the night and go outside the house, and if Ralph didn't hear her leave, she would go down the street and get lost and end up in somebody's flower bed. And so he was beside himself. The other thing that's very disconcerting in this situation is that someone who is 65 or 66 and they're active and they look okay, if they don't have any mental processes, they can get themselves into all kinds of trouble. So a lot of times this causes a lot of financial difficulties just because the person will obligate themselves or spend money or use credit cards and they don't even know what they're doing. So poor Ralph was just beside himself. Finally, he decided that he couldn't take care of her at home on that basis, so he found a nearby nursing home and had her committed to that because they had the system to warn if she left the premises. And so that gave him some respite from her care, but he could see her every day. So she stayed there for 37 months until her death. He spent all of their savings and assets to pay for her care. At $5,500 a month for 37 months, it's $194,250. So at the end of the day, he had to file for bankruptcy. His nest egg was gone. He filed for bankruptcy because he had picked up some credit card debt during this whole process of trying to take care of his wife. And so at the end of the day, he had no financial assets except his house and his Social Security. So his whole future was damaged by this thing. Now what a sad deal. And this is not that unusual. It's also not that unusual where we have the traditional situation where mom or dad is in their 80s and spends months and months and months in a nursing home and uses up their nest egg towards the end, or the kids have to chip in. So what did Ralph do wrong? Ralph should have come to see us. The Bond law firm, Bond and Brown now law firm, has been in this business a long time. And one of the things that we can help families with is plan for Medicaid, plan for nursing home care. In Ralph's case, if he'd come to see us, he would not have had to use his nest egg up. We could have created a plan, figured out when Ruth would be able to qualify for Medicaid, saved all or most of his retirement savings, and taken that part of the worry off of her. So he missed a tremendous bet and cost himself all kinds of extra worry and permanently damaged his financial situation by not coming and getting advice early in this process. What is the moral of this story? If you have a loved one who needs nursing home care or is on the verge of needing nursing home care, we offer a free initial consultation about this. And what it ends up is We meet, we figure out what the situation is, we figure out if we can create a plan that will solve the problem and save money for the family and accomplish the care for the mom or dad that's needed, and we can make a huge difference for the families. So don't let people that you know or care about just go along spending the money, worrying about it every day. They need to come here and see if we can't work out a plan that will save them a tremendous amount of worry and headache.